I served on the Arts and Culture Commission, and I served on it for about 4.5 years, and I chaired it for more than 4 of those years. That was starting, my chairmanship was the year 2000 to 2004.
How was that?
It was a great experience. We did a lot of things. We had an energized board. We had a lot of people applying for the board. We didn't have enough spots for all of them. We also had an Art and Public Places Committee that had been independent to some degree before I was there, but then it ended up directly reporting to the board, and the chair of that committee was, not the board, of the commission, and the chair of that committee was on the commission. And we did a lot of things. During that period, just a couple of things that stand out is there was a question about whether or not we could be like Tempe and have the businesses that build a new structure of a certain square footage to put a certain percent of the cost of that per square foot into outside art for the public to enjoy. And what outside art that would be there would have to be approved by the Arts and Culture Commission and eventually by the City Council. And we made that happen. I actually went down to Tempe, got a hold of the ordinance. One major change we made to it in Tempe, it had to be 50,000 square foot structure or more that was built. We changed it to 5,000. I talked to the city government and they said that the developers would never buy it. I asked for the names of the top 5 developers, and myself and other members of the commission went around and talked to them. They all bought into it. And we pretty much, with some modifications, adopted the Tempe ordinance based on 5,000 square feet. And so now every new structure of 5,000 square feet that's built, or if it's remodeled 5,000 square feet, must have a certain amount of dollars put into public art, or they can put the money instead into a city committee. That was one of the things. The other thing is the Joe Beeler sculpture uptown. One of our responsibilities is to make sure that money that the city collects through taxes is used properly for art. So we had the citizens choose among various sculptures that had been presented to us, choose which one would go up there. And they chose the one of Joe Beeler. So we got that done. I mean, I could go on, many more things. But we did things for the city that I think would not have happened except for the commission.
So things kind of, when was that incidentally?
2000 to 2004.
Okay, so what's happened? I'm kind of inch my way into this. What's happened with the commissions?
Well, number one, we have more commissions than we had then. We have a sustainability commission. We have a budget oversight commission, which has a very, very different role than the other commissions. I've heard complaints from city staff, public complaints that they made at city council meetings that there's high turnover on the commissions, and it's hard to get people to sign up for the commissions. So it's hard to get the volunteers. And I've heard complaints, and I think there's some genuineness to these complaints, that a lot of things that the staff is asked to do by the commissions turn out to be a waste of time. You know, staff, I have to be very supportive of staff on many things. Their main job is to run the city. And they do that well. I think they do that very well. I think we have a very good staff. But they have 2 other major functions. One is they need to prepare the city council meetings, and when the city council decides that they want to have a project investigated, that falls upon staff to do it. Well, the same thing happens with commissions. Commissions do a lot of the work themselves. The members, the volunteers do. For example, you know, we have a commission that goes out and looks at the various structures in the city and says, is that something that should be a historic landmark? Well, that's done by the volunteers on the commission. It's not done by the city staff. But there are things that commissions ask the city staff to do. And I'm hearing complaints that they're asking too much of the city staff. That's not a new complaint. I've heard that for the 15 years I've been here. And there's probably truth to that, frankly. And so city staff has an opportunity to complain what the commissions do to the council. They can't complain when the council asks them to do a study and then it gets shelved because the council is their boss. But the reality, not every study that's suggested by a commission or a council is going to end up with something resulting from it. That's just the nature of things. So I think that the issue right now is you have the staff that's frustrated by the fact that they have too much work coming out of the commissions. But there's also a frustration that the commissions have. Not really with staff, really with the city council. And it's a complaint that's been going on for the 15 years I've been here, and that is technically the commissions report to the city council. That's their boss. But the city council has pretty much taken a hands-off position from the commissions. Now that may sound like a good thing to some people, but it really isn't, because if you're a commission and you've got some ideas for strategic changes in your area of expertise, you want to be able to go to your boss and say, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. Is that something that you would support me pursuing? They can't do that. They won't get an answer. So what happens very often with a commission is they pursue something. They may take years pursuing it. Finally, it's complete. The study is done. It goes to the council. And then the council rejects it. Now, there ought to be a way that they can get feedback as they're going through this kind of study from the council so they don't waste too much time. And that is a complaint that commissioners have had for 15 years. It's not this council. I think this council gives a little more direction than many of them. But it's a complaint that's gone on for a long time.
Isn't that kind of the nature of the beast? I mean, you look at something, you investigate it, you either do it or you don't. So if the commissions weren't there, the staff would have to do that.
Well, staff will never do strategic planning. That's not what they're set out to do. If the city council comes along and says, I want you to investigate something, the staff forms a task force. And often they have citizens as part of that task force. But they're working on something that came out of the council or came out of a commission. They're not going to initiate strategic plans for the city. That's not their job. And when you come up with a strategic change, you're getting into politics. And I think our staff people are pretty smart, and they want to keep their jobs. They have good jobs, and they're going to stay out of politics. They're going to do what their bosses have told them to do. Their main boss, of course, is the council, but to some degree right now, commissions are their boss. Not anywhere as big as council, but they feel an obligation that if they're supposed to be working with a commission, the commission asks them to do something, they're going to do their level best to do that, even if they think it's crazy.
So what's happened? This whole thing has just kind of come unraveled, and there's
well, what happened, as I understand it, is that these frustrations of wasting of time and difficulty in getting volunteers for the commission have been brought forward to the city council with some frequency by the staff, and the city council last December said to the staff, okay, we've heard your complaint. Now we want you to come back with recommendations on how we make the commissions more effective. And a few months later, about a month ago, maybe 5 weeks ago, the staff came back with their recommendation. Their recommendation was eliminate all the commissions that we legally can. And that's all of them except for planning and zoning. They didn't look at the commissions one by one and say, okay, let's look at what this commission's responsibilities are. Maybe some of these should be cut out. Or maybe the whole commission should be cut out. They just took an axe to it. When this came before the council the first time, there was some shock, I think. I don't think the council expected it. But they wanted to support staff, good staff. So by a vote of 4-3, they rejected it. But they said, come back with a better idea. A week later, they came back again, and I watched that meeting, on the city site, because I didn't even know about it. I mean, I'm sure it was legally posted, but there wasn't really much information put out to the public about it. And out of that meeting, they were again told, go back and do some more work. And then they came back a third time, and the third time that they came back, it was not really clear to me as I was in the audience as to what they were suggesting in lieu of eliminating the commissions. But the conversation that went on with the council covered a lot of ground, and the bottom line is it ended up in a vote, a 4-3 vote again, but this time 4 votes to eliminate all the commissions they legally could, which is all the commissions except for planning and zoning. And in addition, the staff was told, we want you to come up with a way to keep the citizens involved, but you cannot create standing committees. Now, a standing committee, one of the ideas staff had early on was we could have standing committees report to the staff to do some of these same functions. City Council said no. We're not even going to allow that by a vote of 4-3. Now, since then, there's been articles in the newspaper, quotes from the staff where they say, we are absolutely going to involve the public. My personal dilemma is I can't figure out how they can involve the public in strategic planning, because they can, of course, have them be on task forces as they do now, but a task force deals with a specific issue. It doesn't come up with new strategic ideas. They're not going to be able to have a standing committee that goes out and looks around the community and says, that his resident ought to be a historic landmark. So is staff going to do that? That means we're going to have to pay more staff people to do that. They're not going to have a standing committee like the Art and Public Places Committee that is focused on putting art in public places. They can't do that. So once in a while, is the staff just going to come up with an idea of, hey, let's put another sculpture out somewhere in the city? And then maybe form a task force when they think it's right? Maybe. But it's not going to be the same thing. It's not going to allow the strategic ideas to come forth from the public. Then we have another complication. The newest commission is the Budget Oversight Commission. Budget Oversight Commission, I think, was one of the great ideas that the City Council came up with. Because I think you'll recall that a few years ago, we had a city manager who had many, many pluses, but one of the things he had is he had a accounting system which was not something that is used in regular accounting practices. Now, we've discarded that. We don't use that anymore. And we had a couple of people in the city who complained about it, and they were just passed off as extremists. But the point of all that is our city staff wasn't doing as good a job as they could have done. And the only oversight they had are outside auditors. The problem with that is we keep reading in the paper. If you read the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times any week, you're going to see an article in there about outside auditors who just paid a huge fine because they let the company that they're auditing get away with doing practices that they shouldn't have. Now, I'm not suggesting to you that that happens all the time. I'm sure it doesn't. But it happens from time to time because these outside accounting companies that do the auditing, first rule of every business is you have to do what you need to do to stay in business. And if you start auditing all your customers and complaining about every little thing, you're going to get fired. You're going to do something else. So you only complain about the really big things. And sometimes, as you can see from the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, they don't even complain about the big things. I'm not suggesting our auditors are doing that. But it scares me that that happens. So having a citizen budget oversight committee in this city strikes me as a very, very good idea. Whether it's a committee or a commission, doesn't matter to me. But having the independence to go in and look at what's done. Now, it's important how you staff it. I know some of the members on that committee, and I'm impressed by their credentials. Not everybody is. But the city council gets to select who sits on that commission. So they can make sure that they put top-notch people on that commission. But I really want that commission. I sleep better at night knowing I have a commission that can be helpful to the city and say, hey, I know you're doing a good job, but here's how you can do it better, and this is going to save the city some money. You know, I think that's a great idea. That commission will be gone September 1. All those commissions are going to be gone September 1, unless the city council reverses itself. They're all gone, and no standing committee can be put in its place. So we lose the citizen budget oversight. That's not possible. So let's be realistic. Let's come down with a realistic number of goals. To do that, I think would make more sense than saying, okay, let's clear the deck. In a sense, they're not going to have to go to the meetings. They're not going to prepare the meetings. They're not going to write the minutes of the meetings. That's going to be saving time. But they're still going to have to do things like the art in public places. They're going to have to do something, unless they let it just die, they're going to have to do something about the historic landmark homes, etc. I guess staff could do it in such a way and just ignore the good things, the valuable things the commissions are done, and maybe that would save some staff time. But I don't think realistically it's going to save any staff time. But they do. They do. And, they're in a better position than me to analyze that in the short term. But in the long term, we're going to lose so much, in my opinion, in the terms of strategic planning, in terms of new ideas, new citizen ideas. Now, one of the things the staff has said to me and other people have said to me is, well, look, we're going to get those new ideas anyway. We have committees, we have organizations all over town, and they're going to come with the new ideas. Well, let's say they come with a new idea. They don't have any structure to follow through on that new idea. Does that mean the staff's going to pick it up and run with it? Or the council's going to pick it up and run with it? If they do, then it's going to be a lot more staff time. But I think most likely, unless that organization runs with it, and some have in the past. We have a fireplace ordinance that came out of Keep Sedona Beautiful, for example. Usually it won't happen.
It seems like the city is shifting its area of focus from being more embracing of the community to we run our town and we run a tight ship. What do you think about that possible?
I think you're right on. I wasn't here when the city was formed. I did talk to some of the people who were involved in it. And it took 3 tries to get this thing finally approved. And of course there are multiple reasons why people voted against it when they voted against it. But one reason that was clear was they didn't trust that the government would be concerned about the will of the people and would follow the will of the people, that the government would go out and ask the people what they wanted. So to reassure them, the first government did a number of things. One of the things they did is they formed some commissions. Art and culture was a big, big deal in those days. And when they set up the original government, they had a department manager for art and culture. Now, just like you have community development as a department manager, these people were equal. By the time I got here 10 years later, that level had been reduced down one. We no longer had a department manager, but we still had someone dealing with art and culture. recently, that level disappeared and art and culture was given to the human relations manager as a combined responsibility with human relations. Now the council, at staff's recommendation, is going to take that away. And in its place, they're going to hire a 30-hour person to deal with art and culture issues. And one of the things I've told that person will spend a lot of time on will be making sure that the art in the classroom program is done. Well, that totally confuses me because right now we hire somebody 20 hours a week to deal with that. So it's just pushed down. The other thing is I was sitting at these council meetings. One of the questions that the council asked of staff, the new people that had come in from other communities, did you have commissions in your community? And the answer that came back was no, we didn't have it. Sedona has been unique in public participation. Other communities don't have anywhere as much public participation. And I agree with you, we are definitely moving in that direction in the name of efficiency.